always kind of wanted to see what an orange helmet looked like with white power tees and white stripe. But at the same time, I feel that the helmet is just symbolic, and I don't want that to be messed with. And it looks like we have a caller from Nashville.
I bet that's our boy, Jeremiah. Is that you?
What's up, guys? How are y'all doing?
Hey, Jeremiah, how's it going? Carter, introduce our new man here.
From Middle Tennessee, Jeremiah. He's a huge Vols fan. Me and Keith have known him for a little while now. He's very knowledgeable, and he'll also be helping out when it comes to when we get ready to talk high school football. He's over in Middle Tennessee, and he'll do a great job. So welcome, Jeremiah, to the show, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we hate you couldn't make it at the top of the show. We've already talked about quite a few things. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and ask you some of the same questions. I hate to do this to our millions and millions of listeners out there, but I want to just run over briefly with you, Jeremiah, some of the things that we've talked about and get your opinions on them since you will be a part of the show. Now, we will talk a little bit about high school football later on, perhaps before we close out the show. Today's a big day for high school football. A lot of teams scrimmaging today. In fact, my Greenville Green Devils are down at Marshtown East right about this time, probably whooping up on the Hurricanes. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there to give you the live report, or I would have. Maybe that's something we'll try to do, before the season gets kicked off. But, Jeremiah, we were talking earlier. First of all, did you have a chance to get to hear Butch Jones's press conference today?
I was able to listen to part of it, read some of the quotes and caught up with it. Heard some good things. Heard some things that were, typical coach talk as well.
Right. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of coach speak out there. Of course, that's always the case with Butch. We've kind of come to expect that. Let's get your thoughts on the quarterback battle. Who do you, just based on what you've seen as a fan, who do you expect will win that job and why?
Hold on, guys. One second here. As of next week, you all will be Mondays at 5 p.m. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, a week from this coming Monday. Like, we won't do it this coming Monday. It'll be the following Monday, which would be August the 11th.
Okay, so is this show and then August 11th, correct?
Right, August the 11th at 5 o'clock.
All right, now proceed to where you were going. I'm on different various Vol forums here. I need to make sure they get the correct information.
Okay.
Okay, Carter, I hope you heard that. He was breaking up on me, so.
Yeah, I got it, man.
Okay, good deal. Anything else, Ray?
No,
yes,
sir.
Go ahead.
No, sir.
Was that your best, John Ward? No, sir-ree. All right, go ahead, Jeremiah. Finish your thoughts on the quarterback battle.
Well, it's interesting because what I expect to happen and what I'd like to see happen are honestly two different things, because what I expect to see happen from my point of view is that Justin Worley is going to be the starting quarterback, at least against Utah State, strictly because the lack of experience on this team and the fact that it doesn't hurt to have a senior at least at the most important position on the team. And and as far as his improvements have come, I think he's come a long way this summer. And it's an offense that I think takes a lot of players a year to fully understand how to run it, what to do from all that kind of perspective. And I feel like Worley, with his understanding of the offense now, I think he could do a good job. But personally, as a fan, I would prefer it to be Joshua Dobbs, because despite the fact that probably 75% of this fan base has already given up on him based on 4 games, I believe the guy still has a lot to prove, has a lot more potential than he's shown as a true freshman when he was basically thrown to the wolves and forced to line up against Alabama in his first ever, appearance. And obviously things weren't good for him last year. He looked horrible against Missouri and Auburn, to name a couple specific teams. But I believe the kid has a good work ethic. He has a good head on his shoulders, and I bet he's had a good summer as well. And I'd like to see with his skill sets, I think he fits the offense better, and I'd like to see him be out there partly to look forward to 2015 as well.
Yeah, Jeremiah, there's a third guy out there that everybody seems to have forgotten about, and that's Nathan Peterman. And you mentioned that a lot of the Tennessee fans have kind of thrown Joshua Dobbs out with the garbage because of what he did in 4 games last year. Well, imagine how Nathan Peterman must feel. He comes out for basically a half against Florida, has maybe one of the worst performances we've ever seen at quarterback, and then all of a sudden, according to the fans and even most of the media around here, this guy can't do anything. I haven't completely given up on Peterman, especially when, maybe it's coach speak, maybe it's not, but Coach Jones tells us that they're all 3 pretty much, at the same level. They all 3 were doing great things this summer. They didn't go home to jet ski with the boys when they had free time. They stayed on campus and worked on their craft. So I like to hear that. And let's give Nathan Peterman a little bit of love. And who knows, man, by the end of the year, the way injuries are, he may end up being our guy. Next topic for you. And, Carter, I know I hate that word, but it slipped, so forgive me. Team speed. Who are the young guys this year, Jeremiah, that you hope to see make a difference as far as speed goes on this team?
Well, honestly, my hope is that anybody can get out there and, handle the speed of the game, anything that's going to help us win games. But guys that I look at and think that they can step on the field as a true freshman and be contributors starts with Dylan Bates. I mean, this is a young man that's been around football his whole life. Basically, as far as I'm concerned, he's Bill Bates all over again, but the difference is this time is now we have weight rooms and things that Bill didn't have to his advantage, so he's basically a bigger, faster Bill, and I think he's a young man that's going to be a star right away. I mean, he'll have growing pains along the way because, quite frankly, everybody does at some point or another, but he's a guy that would greatly helps the linebacker depth because of Kurt Maggitt playing defensive end a lot of times. And I look at Todd Kelly and both of the Berry brothers as far as guys in the secondary and think all 3 of them have the speed to handle the game. It's just the same question you have with any freshman. Is he smart enough and is he, developed in that area enough to be able to step on the field and not, get torched every other play because he doesn't know where the hell to go?
Yeah, that's where a lot of these young guys were going to kind of depend on their speed to make up for some of their mental errors. They're going to make mental errors. I mean, that's just, you pretty much said it as a freshman. That's kind of a natural progression of learning not necessarily a new offense, but a whole new level of football. And that's what a lot of these kids, I relate it to culture shock. Most of these guys, they're no longer the big boy on campus like they were at high school. It's all time to start over when you get to the SEC, and we'll see which one of these guys. A guy that I'm looking for big things from, and we haven't heard much out of him so far, is Nico Kramer. I don't even know if they've determined where he's going to play yet, but I really hope to see some kind of contribution out of that young man this year. His dad, I remember watching his dad play, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the Kramer name, get some mention here in Knoxville again. One other thing we talked about earlier, Jeremiah, the obvious thing, the offensive and defensive line concerns. If you want to talk just a little bit about who you expect to actually make that transition this year from a guy sitting on the bench looking in to an actual star in this league. Do you have any stars out there that we haven't thought of?
Well, it's probably guys you already touched on before I checked in, but there's 2 guys on the offensive line that I think could be stars by the end of the season, but people already know their names, and that's Matt Crowder and Marcus Jackson, and these are 2 guys that when I watch them, they don't necessarily have that athleticism that James Stone or Zach Fulton had, but these are 2 guys that have a mean streak like really no offensive lineman I've seen in a while, although, credit to the ones that were here last year. They're coachable guys. They work their tails off. They're very fundamentally sound players. They're not going to get beat mentally. They just might get beat physically because they see a defensive lineman that they, can't line up against. But I think as the season progresses, they're 2 guys that will become alpha males on that offensive line due to the fact that really the other 3 don't have nearly as much experience. Well, really none at all compared to those 2.
Well, there is Dontavis Blair, the JUCO guy. Granted, his experience is not at the SEC level, but he does have plenty of years, playing that position.
I guess that's kind of where my worry comes in, because although I think that's a guy that's very talented and he could turn into being, I'm not going to say he could be as good as Juwan James or Tiny Richardson, but I honestly believe if he can put it all together, he can be a darn good offensive tackle. It's just you never truly know until these guys get on the field, because some JUCO kids, they step on the field and it's like they were there the whole time, and some guys get on the field and they never should have been there in the first place. So that's one that I'm very interested to see.
I look back at last year. You mentioned Tiny Richardson, and Tiny Richardson's my boy. I love the guy. I hope he finds a home in the NFL, but let's face it, last year was not his year. I think coming out was a mistake. Obviously, it was a mistake. He went undrafted. But if you just look back at the way he played last year, a lot of our line in general just didn't produce. I mean, going into last season, this was supposed to be the best line in the SEC, if not the best line in the nation, and they just did not produce. So, I'm expecting bigger things than most people are from this year's line. Not because I'm a homer, not because I'm a sunshine pumper, not because I'm a diehard Tennessee fan. I'm just basing it on these young men and their will and desire. That will take you farther than many things at this level of football, and I think our guys are going to get it done this year. That's just me. Carter, did you have anything that you wanted to ask Jeremiah to touch on before we move along?
I mean, there's not really. I guess you kind of asked me everything I would have asked. Well, actually, I do want to ask one thing, Jeremiah, because you weren't here last week. I want to know, what is your favorite moment or favorite game that you watched on TV and favorite game you attended? I want to hear that.
Well, the favorite game attended is a tough answer, just because in my lifetime, it was more difficult to get to games when I was younger than I would have liked. So most of the opportunities that would have been good ones to be at were missed out on. So honestly, as far as games attended, I'd honestly have to say the first one I ever attended, just because, you hear people say there's nothing like it, and you think, well, I mean, they're probably just exaggerating it. And then you're in that stadium, the band is forming the tee, the crowd is, they're going crazy, and there's goosebumps everywhere, and the excitement level there, it's unmatched by anything I've ever attended at a sporting event. And that was a game against Kentucky in 2010, I think it was, Derek Dooley's first year there, when we beat Kentucky to clinch the Music City Bowl. And what I thought was the start of something very special at Tennessee under Derek Dooley, I must admit. Now, looking back, obviously that was a bad thought on my part, but
you're not alone.
And that was a cool experience. And I've been to some other games that were good, but the fact that they were losses, it's hard for me to rank them that highly. And then probably my favorite moment watching on TV is without question that 2001 game against Florida. I was 8 years old, hadn't watched very many games before then, was still slowly learning, everything as far as the game of football goes, why this penalty was called or why they did this or that. But I still knew the magnitude of that game, just because sitting at home watching College Game Day that morning with my brother and seeing how significant that game was, and then seeing all the College Game Day guys pick Tennessee to lose, and not only pick them to lose, but say they can't even keep the game close enough to get a BCS bowl berth. And all I could think was, are we overrated or something? And my brother said, no, what they just did was make Tennessee's going to win the ball game now, is all he could say. And, now you look back and realize that the players were watching it too. And just that performance by that team, I've never seen a Tennessee team play better on just one Saturday than that team. I think that team could have beat anybody they would have played that day, and it's unfortunate that that team didn't show up a week later.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was a hard memory for some of us to live with that next week, but that's part of it. That's part of why we love this sport so much and why we love our team so much. I do want to ask you pretty much the first thing we touched on tonight. The Joe Mixon ordeal out in Oklahoma, Jeremiah, have you had